Mr. Aragones, I'm a big fan of your cartoons and your mustache.
Headband, swords, nose, pencil legs, dog, cheese dip. These are the ingredients for the recipe that is Groo the Wanderer by cartoonist Sergio Aragonés. Aragones was born in Castellón, Spain in 1937 during the Spanish Civil War. During his life, he's done different roles: artist, writer, actor. The man has done it all. He speaks multiple languages and was a mime at some point. All of that, and he stomped Star Wars, massacred Marvel, and destroyed DC. His family left Spain and briefly lived in France before moving to Mexico, where Aragones grew up.
My family emigrated to Mexico in the Spanish Civil War. I'm a Mexican, my papers are Mexican, and I was raised in Mexico. I think myself as Mexican.
Studio in Mexico?
Well, he was a producer. He was in the industry, and I grew up in it.
Yeah.
The first jobs that I had is when my father saw me, what are you doing right now? I have a vacation. He will take me to the studio and I will work, or helping the editors rewinding things, or putting dresses on the storage, or building wax bottles, or painting a set. You know, it was always keeping you busy.
And in the meantime, you're absorbing all the information about putting things together, show together.
Well, I will always escape, and if they were making a Western movie, I will get myself guns and play in a real cowboy set. I fell on the street all the time, like being shot.
You've acted, haven't you?
Yes, yes.
He was drawing from an early age, paying his dues, and eventually getting published in humor magazines like Mexico City's Mañana. He studied architecture, but focused on his art.
But eventually, everybody says, well, your cartoons are very crazy. Why don't you go to MAD? You know? But I knew MAD. I have been a fan of MAD in Mexico, but I knew they didn't publish cartoons. They published satire.
That's right.
And incredible drawings. So I knew there was no way I could ever work there. But I had to do it because everybody says, you have to go to MAD. So when I went to MAD and they look at the cartoons, they saw it as an article. I had probably, I don't know, 40 gags about astronauts. So they took it and they made a two-pager and says, well, we have bought 2 pages of gags.
About astronauts?
About astronauts, so they call it a mad look at the United States space effort, something like that. So that was my first article. And they make the mistake to tell me, well, mi casa es su casa. I took it literally and I was there next day.
Aragones, along with his iconic margin gags, debuted in Mad issue 76 from 1963 with his piece, A Mad Look at the US Space Effort. He stayed with Mad until the end of the magazine's publication. His earliest comic book work was writing comics, like co-creating the Western Batlash in 1968 at DC Comics. So outside of Mad, which was mostly what Aragones calls pantomime cartooning, his early traditional comics work was writing.
But at the time I was doing comics, they were not humor comics. There were magazines that used cartoons, but comics per se, there were none. So I started writing. I wrote a few things for the House of Mystery, the House of Horrors, Binky and His Friend. I created a character called Batlash, it was a Western. And then we started doing a comic book called Plop. That's where I started drawing the comics, and I realized then that I really wanted to draw my own comic book.
Sergio came up with Groo. He'd been drawing Groo on everything. He draws incessantly, this man. You've met him, you see this. He was drawing Groo every place he went. It's just a character that came out and like a great movie star demands to be seen, Groo demanded to be drawn.
What I've been trying to do with Groo is to show that violence doesn't pay. He's an ignorant barbarian who doesn't know how to read and write. That's where he never succeeds. And all the issues here, at the end, he loses whatever he's trying because he's not educated, he just fights.
He's one of those people who is incredibly stupid because he doesn't know how stupid he is. He thinks he's the greatest hero in the world because people run from him in fear, and they run from him in fear because if you stick around Groo, the odds are very good that you're going to get your head sliced off.
Groo is a terrible character. Groo is a mercenary. Groo is immoral. Groo has no values.
Groo was born out of a desire for creators' rights, in an industry where companies and publishers would completely own the work produced by writers and artists. Aragones himself waited until 1982 to debut Groo in a comic called Destroyer Duck from Eclipse Comics. The comic was written by Steve Gerber, with pencils by Jack the King Kirby, and inks by Alfredo Alcala. It's an important comic in the fight for creative ownership. It was produced to help Gerber in his legal battle against Marvel for the rights of his character Howard the Duck. Howard isn't a Spider-Man type, where others have left their mark on the character. Even though others have written Howard, the Duck is so uniquely Gerber that it's hard to replicate his humor, commentary, and perspective. Gerber would even collaborate with some of the same artists like Val Myrick and Gene Colan for different projects. Howard feels more like a creator-owned character that happened to be created at a mainstream publisher. Everyone who worked on Destroyer Duck #1, including Kirby and Alcala, worked on the book for free. Another important point is that Eclipse let everyone who worked on the book, including Aragones, maintain the rights to their stories and creations. This isn't a knock on Steve Gerber at all, but while Gerber produced his character for Marvel, Aragones hoarded Groo away until he could find a publisher that would let him keep the rights. Gerber's battle itself is a step towards writers and artists being able to claim ownership for their creations. Groo's first story is 4 pages and wordless outside of a single panel. It's a taste of what's in store. A warrior wanders into a situation bigger than he can handle, and he makes things worse. In the back of Destroyer Duck #1, Gerber breaks down his situation and thanks everyone involved in the book. The Duck went on to have his own series with Kirby and Gerber, leaving after issue 5. Kirby did get paid for the subsequent issues, just not the first one.
I tried to publish it, but in those times, all the companies kept the rights. They didn't share the copyrights. So it took almost 12 years for me to publish Groo with a company called Pacific that shared the copyright, because I didn't want to just give it away like everybody gave all the comics away.
After Destroyer Duck, Groo made 2 appearances in a Mike Rell comic called Star Slayer in issues 4 and 5. He has dialogue this time. While the stories are written, drawn, and plotted by Aragones, writer Mark Evanier dialogues and edits the book, and the esteemed Stan Sakai does the lettering.
I kind of sandblast his English and help him with the story structures occasionally, and between us it comes out all right.
Colorist Gordon Kent stayed on for 4 issues of Groo's series, but was replaced with longtime colorist Tom Luth. So Duck, Star Slayer 4 and 5, and then finally Groo gets his own series at Pacific Comics in 1982. The issue opens up with a biography on Aragones and a 1-page comic that gives readers a look behind the curtain of Groo's publication history. Pacific Comics started as a used comics mail order business started by 2 brothers named Bill and Steve Shanes in the early 70s. By 1974, the brothers opened up their first shop in California and eventually started publishing and distributing their own books through the direct market. A big draw is that Pacific, unlike the big mainstream publishers, let creators maintain the rights for the creations they wrote and drew. King Kirby himself put out books like Captain Victory and Silver Star at Pacific, where one of the titans of American comics was finally able to get the rights for the work he created. Kirby got royalties from his Pacific books too. Groo stayed at Pacific for 8 issues until the publisher shut down in the mid-80s. This is an explanation from Pacific co-founder Steve Shanes. Quote, "The reason Pacific Comics failed can be summed up very simply. We had 2 lines of activity, publishing and distribution. Most of our comic books still made money hand over fist, but there was a big problem in distribution. We extended too much credit to retailers who didn't pay us on a timely basis, and we were already working on a minuscule profit margin, maybe 5% to 8%. We didn't push hard enough to get the money from receivables, who owed us hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you had to boil down the single biggest reason we blew it, that would be our poor cash management on the distribution side." Unquote. Aragones took the character back to Eclipse for a one-shot. Mark Evanier had this to say, quote, "Had Groo been owned by Pacific instead of Sergio, we couldn't have taken it elsewhere to keep it alive." Unquote. In the 80s, Marvel editor-in-chief Jim Shooter set up the Epic Comics imprint at Marvel, which was edited by Archie Goodwin and Al Milgrom. Some of the books from this imprint are Jim Starlin's Dreadstar and Stray Toasters by Bill Sienkiewicz. Aragones and Groo would go to Epic and stay for a decade, putting out 120 issues without missing a deadline and still maintaining the rights. When he went to Epic, Aragones made sure the new runs were accessible for new and old readers. According to Aragones, the minstrel character was created as a way to recap, with Evanier writing the minstrel songs. Creative recurring character, but also a way to keep readers up to speed. The mid-90s saw Marvel dealing with financial difficulties, in part due to the company's owner Ron Perlman's mismanagement, and his pushing of number ones, gimmicks, feeding into the speculator market. Groo moved to Image Comics for 12 issues before wandering to Dark Horse in 1998, where he and his team reside today. The modern Dark Horse stories don't use consecutive numbering. By this point, they're more like miniseries, like 4-issue arcs of Groo fighting against Conan the Barbarian or gods from different pantheons. It kind of fits the character that he goes from publisher to publisher, surviving whatever gets thrown at him. Groo has largely maintained the same creative team with Aragones, Evanier, Sakai, and Luth. The work gets better with each story. When Luth retired from comics a few years back, a new colorist named Carrie Strachan joined the crew. She colored some of Aragones' mad work. Sadly, Luth died of a heart attack in May 2024, but the man's work was a key part of Groo. Aragones has a deceptively simple, fast and loose style. Even though he studied anatomy, he is known to break the rules and get the impression of an image instead of going for photorealism. The fast and loose style is so much more engaging than realism, especially for a character like Groo. Dark and gritty would not fit this character. It's an identity that is so unique to Aragones.
The speed has to do with the style. It's a very loose style. So then you don't have to concentrate that much on the proportion. There's no magic in this. The magic comes with a lot of practice. And
Well,
when people say, oh, Sergio, you can do it because you're a genius. This is, you are underestimating 8 hours a day for the last 20 years of practicing and many hours in the library. That's the genius part of it. If one leg is thicker than the other, it doesn't make that much of a difference. And a hand, when you're drawing a hand, is just 5 little sausages. When you're doing realistic, then you have to draw every muscle and every proportion. You have to have this here, and this have to be proportionate. When you're drawing a cartoon, and that's it.
A strength Groo has over long-running mainstream comics is that someone can pick up any random issue and get into it. It doesn't demand that someone knows the entire continuity, so it focuses on keeping readers entertained. It's a comic that swerves around gatekeeping. Aragones expertly blends the humorous commentary with action, finding unique ways to cover social issues, modern topics, and media in his anachronistic barbarian era. All of that experience with acting, aquatic ballet, being a mime, different types of performing, was channeled into the humor of Groo.
Everything is related. You cannot be a writer or a cartoonist or a musician without being an actor. You have to act. And it's like an animator. I've done animation, and what it has helped me more in that is the fact that I have acted. But it's just a vehicle, Groo, to talk about whatever you want, because you can place it in any period you want. Groo also does about, one of the issues I did, it's called the Island of Felicidad, the Island of Happiness. It's just a perfect island. And when Groo arrives, and when Groo leaves, that island has become our modern society. They don't have fences, they don't have money, they don't have violence. And they don't have,
I mean, they didn't in the beginning.
No, but when Groo arrives, it starts ruining everything just by changing something. It's like a symbiotic relation between all the island, and he disrupting a little bit ruins everything. You know, it's important to use a comic, have fun, but at the same time have something to say.
In 2014, Groo would finally face off against Conan the Barbarian, with Thomas Yates doing the artwork for the Sumerian swordsman. The swordsman of Stupid versus the swordsman of Samaria. Conan had a difficult time. Even though he'll do stories with social commentary, Aragones will sometimes just do gags without any other message, showing Groo's ineptitude and how he sometimes finds a way to make things worse while interacting with his army of supporting characters. Even the gods fear Groo's clumsiness. Usually, Groo's dog Rafferdo is the more intelligent and reasonable one in their duo. In a medium that's now so focused on movie deals, hype, and gimmicks, It's nice to see a book and team that stands the test of time and still makes comics to make comics while having full control over the character. I did want to throw this in at the end. According to Jim Shooter, before Aragonés went to Pacific with Groo, he visited Marvel and wanted to retain even a little control of the character. Shooter seemed open to letting Aragonés keep the rights. As we know, Groo liked the deal at Pacific instead. Shooter wrote about this on his blog, and I have other sources in the description. I don't know how much of it is true, I wasn't there, but I did want to include that piece. What's so powerful about this comic is how electric each issue is. The enthusiasm Aragonés has for his storytelling is contagious. It's cool that he's still putting out new stories.
When I come to my studio, I'm not like everybody who goes to work. I'm going to my studio, I come here, I'm having a great time. I'm sitting here and I couldn't trade every second that I'm doing here for nothing else. If you ask me, what do you want to do, play tennis or draw? Anything. This is my favorite thing in the whole world.
Also, I'll throw out a channel real quick. Mark Evanier and Sergio Aragonés have a YouTube channel where they talk about their work on Groo. They haven't put anything out recently, but it has a lot of information straight from the people behind the book. I've done an essay on another jack of all trades, the artist Billy Graham, and some other creator-owned essays like Madman, Usagi, Stray Bullets, Vagabond, Hellboy, etc. They're all on my channel for free, and I have playlists for all my essays. As always, the transcript for this essay is available on my website, witsandpod.com. If it's not on there, it's not me. Share these essays around. Thanks for taking the time to watch my work. Chaos ensues.